My name's Craig, but you can call me Dragon. And Matt, we have Dragon Jonathan Martinez taking on Frankie Saenz. And it's an interesting fight because we haven't seen Frankie Saenz in a minute. It really has been quite a while since he lost his last fight against Marlon Vera. And it was a left hand right down the pipe, dropped him. He went down to his wrestling base. And this is a Division I wrestler that spent time at ASU. And I believe it was Northern Colorado State. But this is a guy that's 39 years old. So I get it. You have that base. And wrestling, for most people in MMA, it's the base that you want. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys with a karate background like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. You don't see a lot of people with Wushu Sanda backgrounds. But you have Frankie Saenz with that classic wrestling base. He's had a lot of success. He has double the amount of wins than he has losses. But in terms of this one, it's tough because if you look at his last two wins, we're going back 2 years, 7 months ago, Merab Dvalishvili. And that's one that a lot of people might want to point out to you if you're looking at this fight. Here's the trouble, though. It was a split decision win. We put a lot of stock in MMA decisions here with Fight Night Picks, and I hold my peers in pretty high regards. This is how they scored the fight for Frankie Saenz against Merab Dvalishvili. 4 MMA media members scored at 30-27 for Merab. 6 scored at 29-28 for Merab. 3 scored at 29-28 Saenz. 1 scored at 30-27 for Saenz. This was also Merab Dvalishvili's UFC debut. It was also Frank Triggs' UFC debut as a referee. Figured I'd toss that one out there. Keep that in your pocket in terms of MMA trivia. All this to say, Frankie Saenz probably lost that fight in terms of the popular vote. And then he beat Henry Briones, who's not in the UFC anymore. So it's a weird one there. Whereas Jonathan Martinez, if you're a Chinese fighter at 135 pounds in the UFC...
Avoid him like the plague.
You want no smoke.
No.
He fought Weiliji Buren. He got the win there by decision. He knocked out Liu Pingyuan late in his last win. And then his fight after that, he takes on Andre Ewell. And again, by popular demand... one media member scored that fight 29-28 for Andre Ewell. 11 scored at 29-28 Martinez. 1 scored at 30-27 Martinez. One of the judges in that fight scored at 30-27 for Andre Ewell. And it was Joe Solis, who a lot of people don't like as a judge anymore. But I'll leave that for what it's worth. We've got a Step Brothers reference on the right. We've got Frankie Saenz on the left. What do you make of this fight?
I think this is a pretty clear-cut fight, to be completely honest. Frankie Saenz hasn't been himself in a meaningful amount of time. I know he had those 2 wins, but like you had mentioned, there's sort of an asterisk next to one of them because you're fighting a guy who, yes, we know how good Merab is at this point in his career, but that was almost 2.5 years ago. So just the development that Merab's been able to make after that fight. And for Saenz, he's one of these guys who every year and a half, it seems, it's like, oh, he's fighting. Remember? And that really seems to be what he's kind of defaulted to. Because I remember when they matched him up with Chito Vera, the first thing that came to mind was just why, though? He's 39 years old. Not a guy who you really think is going to make a deep run in this bantamweight division, climb those ranks and maybe fight Piotr Jan. That would be just terrible to watch. But Jonathan Martinez, like you had mentioned, really crisp striking. He's got fairly good cardio, too. Also 13 years younger, which I think is a pretty big thing to point out. He's the bigger guy at 135. And I think this is an interesting fight because Frankie Saenz is the build of what a bantamweight used to be, and Jonathan Martinez is very much kind of the more modern build of what a bantamweight is. We see this in a lot of different divisions where you look back, for instance, Frankie Edgar was a lightweight champion at one point, and he's fighting at bantamweight now. It just shows that athletes now are a lot bigger, they know how to cut weight a little bit better, and I think this is just a really good case point as to kind of show the discrepancy between the two.
It's going to be interesting to see if Frankie Saenz reverts back to that classical wrestling that he has in his back pocket, and the opposite for Jonathan Martinez, a guy that fights out of a southpaw stance. We saw that with Chito Vera, left straight down the pipe, pretty much the finishing tactic for him. Now again, it's been a long time. I just want to see what might work in terms of strengths for both of these guys. Now, you brought it up. Frankie Saenz, shorter guy, smaller reach, thicker guy, older, and Jonathan Martinez like a string bean, and he just goes out there and continues to put out in terms of the strikes on the feet. So it's an interesting matchup in those respects. Martinez actually minus 210 favorite. Frankie Saenz coming in the plus 170 underdog. If you look over in Tapology, at 677 votes, 83% going with Martinez. And if you look at it in terms of how they break it down, 53% saying he is going to win by decision. I think it's one of those fights that's probably tailor-made for a decision by Jonathan Martinez. I could certainly see it where Frankie Saenz, again, goes for a takedown. Martinez, the Liu Pingyuan fight, just toss that knee straight up the middle. But it's more than likely going to be where Jonathan Martinez just continues to land, and it just frustrates Frankie Saenz.
I agree 100%. Martinez is going to be able to keep range, kind of land at distance. And then, again, I don't know if he'll be able to get the finish. It really depends on what Saenz is going to do from that damage that he accrues, because Martinez is going to be on his bike constantly because he's going to want to avoid the wrestling of Saenz. I just think it's kind of the new breed versus the old breed, and Jonathan Martinez should be able to get it done.
Both going with Jonathan Martinez, Matt, in this fight. You're not going to want to miss the rest of our predictions for the card, including an extended look at our main event between Derek Brunson and Edmund Shahbazyan. Keep locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt, and as we always say,
let's get into it.